7:42 a.m. A thick morning mist hangs over the rusted gates of Caldwell powertrain. The damp silence is broken by the harsh grind of air brakes as a massive 18-wheeler backs into the gravel yard. The driver unlatches the heavy trailer doors. Inside, 6 battered VP7 engine blocks sit coated in years of industrial dust. Moments later, a sleek, charcoal Range Rover pulls up next to the loading bay, the engine purring smoothly. Victoria Vraane steps out. Her tailored designer suit and immaculate blonde hair cut through the damp morning air. She walks across the stained concrete with measured steps, a thick leather folio tucked firmly under her arm. Inside the dimly lit shop, Jack Caldwell stands at his workbench, calmly wiping black grease from a heavy wrench. Victoria approaches without knocking, dropping a single disposal manifest onto the metal surface of his workstation. "The board doesn't need this trash," she states flatly. "A country mechanic like you can keep the scrap." Jack doesn't flinch. He simply steps past her, his steady gaze falling upon the rusted casting of engine block number 3. Night falls over the shop. Inside the small office, Jack opens the bottom drawer of a rusted steel desk as his 9-year-old daughter, Lily, watches quietly. He lifts out a heavy folder, its edges yellowed with age. Inside are intricate technical drawings, signed cleanly at the bottom, J. Caldwell, Chief Powertrain Engineer. Lily leans against his arm. The warm glow of the desk lamp casts a soft circle around them, a quiet sanctuary amidst the cold iron of the shop. After putting Lily to bed, Jack makes a single phone call. Early the next morning, Dell, a weathered veteran engineer, arrives in a faded pickup truck. Dell walks straight to engine block number 3. He kneels on the concrete, wiping the heavy dust away, his eyes tracing the familiar serial numbers. He stands up slowly, looking at Jack with a profound, unspoken grief. For years of their lives and forgotten legacy sit abandoned on the shop floor. Without a word of debate, Dell hands Jack a heavy steel wrench. The silent agreement is made. They will rebuild the engines, no matter the cost. Miles away in Charlotte, Victoria sits alone in her glass-walled office on the 32nd floor. The city lights reflect against the dark, polished mahogany of her desk. She pulls a framed photograph closer to the lamplight. It shows her late father standing next to a brilliant engineer whose face is entirely shadowed by a hard hat. Her gaze locks onto the engineer's hand resting on the table in the photo. Across the right knuckle is a distinct, jagged scar. The exact same scar. The revelation shatters the quiet of the 32nd floor. Victoria stands abruptly, leaving her espresso cold on the polished mahogany. She drives through the night. The winding mountain roads to Asheville swallow the silver Range Rover in endless stretches of dark pines. Morning light breaks as she parks 200 yards from Caldwell powertrain. She does not step out. She merely watches from the leather seat. Through the dusty bay windows, Jack and Dell are moving in synchronized rhythm around the heavy iron casting of block number 3. Jack tightens a primary bolt. His hands move with the absolute certainty of muscle memory, the scar on his knuckle catching the light. From the distance, Victoria observes. The condescension that once clouded her vision is entirely gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. Friday morning in Charlotte. The glass doors of her office swing open as Garrett Voss, the chief operating officer, strides in uninvited. Voss is a polished predator in a bespoke suit. He casually tosses a slim, red file folder onto the center of Victoria's desk. He taps the cover, his voice smooth. He outlines a legal trap, a non-compete clause designed to strip Caldwell of everything once the engines run. Victoria does not blink. She stares at the red folder, her face an unreadable mask of ice, calculating her next silent move. When Voss leaves, Victoria slowly opens her bottom desk drawer. She locks the red folder inside, burying his threats in the dark. She turns to a hidden wall safe behind a painting. Her fingers punch in the code with practiced, mechanical precision. From the cold steel interior, she retrieves a small, heavy wooden box fitted with a tarnished brass clasp. Her father's most guarded secret. The sky breaks open. Heavy rain lashes against the windshield of the Range Rover as she drives back toward the mountains. By late afternoon, she arrives at Caldwell Powertrain. The rain drums a relentless beat against the corrugated tin roof of the shop. Inside, Jack stands at the machining table. His sleeves are rolled to the elbow as he meticulously hones the cylinders of block number 3. Victoria steps into the bay, her wool coat damp. She carries the wooden box with the reverence of someone holding a live explosive. Jack pauses. He sets his micrometer down on the oily rag, his piercing blue eyes meeting hers in the dim light. Without a word, she walks to the workbench. She sets the wooden box down on the cold metal, right beside the resurrected engine. "My father kept this in his private safe," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to open it." Jack wipes his grease-stained hands on a clean shop rag. He reaches across the metal table and undoes the brass clasp. He lifts the lid. Inside rests a folded letter on cream stationery, a black USB drive, and a sealed manila envelope. Victoria unfolds the letter. The embossed V of her father's personal stationery catches the warm overhead light. She reads it aloud, her steady voice trembling slightly. The letter details an internal audit her father conducted in secret. Garrett Voss had been embezzling millions through false disposal contracts, routing the stolen funds to offshore shell companies. The letter confirms what Jack already knew. Wallace had intended to fire Voss and formally reinstate Jack as chief powertrain engineer. He had died of a massive stroke 3 weeks after writing the letter, before the legal paperwork could be finalized. Victoria's hand settles slowly onto the bench. The crushing weight of the truth finally breaks through her icy corporate armor. "You didn't just save the engines," she says quietly, looking at Jack. "You saved his legacy from a thief." Jack looks down at the metal casting of block number 3. "Your father was a good man. I was just finishing the job." The heavy silence is broken by soft footsteps. 9-year-old Lily walks into the bay, carefully balancing 2 ceramic mugs. She hands one to Victoria. The cocoa has a small marshmallow floating off-center. "Dad says when people are sad, they drink cocoa," she says. Victoria takes the mug. For the first time in years, the ruthless CEO allows herself to be comforted, holding the warm ceramic tightly. Later that night, sitting in her Range Rover, Victoria makes a decisive call to her personal corporate attorney. "Emergency meeting tomorrow. Pull every disposal contract from the last 3 years. Do not tell Garrett Voss," she orders coldly. By the end of the 5th week, the shop reaches a fever pitch. Engine number 1 is securely bolted to the massive dyno mount. The testing room is a reinforced concrete annex. Dell stands by the thick observation window, monitoring the digital data console. Jack attaches the high-pressure fuel line and ignition harness. Despite weeks of exhaustion, his grease-stained hands are perfectly steady. Victoria stands just feet away from the heavy iron block. The sharp, mechanical scent of fresh oil and warm metal hangs in the air. Jack steps back and looks at her. He points to the red ignition switch. "Your father believed you should start the first one." Victoria places her hand flat against the red ignition switch. She glances at Jack. He gives a single, confident nod. She presses it. The heavy starter motor cranks loudly. The massive V8 engine coughs once, then violently catches. It settles into a deep, aggressive idle. The raw vibration of the machine travels through the concrete floor and into the soles of their shoes. In the control booth, Dell's eyes widen in awe. The digital needles on the data console begin to climb rapidly. Torque rises. Horsepower rises. The thermal output stays perfectly balanced inside the green safety band. The digital screen locks onto the final metric, 612 horsepower at 300 revolutions per minute. It is 4% above the original factory specification. Dell exhales a sound that is almost a laugh, shaking his head at the absolute brilliance of the modified valve timing. Victoria stares at the roaring machine. The engine she had paid to throw away is now pulling its own massive weight on the dyno. She steps away from the deafening noise, pulling out her sleek smartphone. She makes a single, decisive international call. Mr. Bellini, she speaks loudly over the roar. I have 6 restored VP7 engines. Dyno verified. $3 million for the lot. Jack reaches out and cuts the power. The massive dyno begins to slow, the deafening roar fading into a heavy, metallic silence. Inside the booth, the digital gauges slowly drift down through the green zones as the intense heat of the engine begins to dissipate. Victoria walks back to the workbench and sets her phone down. $3 million. They are wiring the deposit tonight. Jack looks at her, his expression perfectly calm. You didn't need me to sell them. You could have done that the day I left. I needed them fixed, he says quietly. The selling was always yours. Your father built the program. You inherited it. Victoria does not answer. She steps closer to the massive machine, placing her hand gently on the cooling metal shroud. Monday evening in Charlotte. Garrett Voss struts into Victoria's office, flanked by 2 sharp-suited corporate attorneys and holding a sealed envelope. He wears a soft, deeply satisfied smile. We are ready to file the injunction. Caldwell completed the engine. We have him. Victoria sits perfectly still at her mahogany desk. Without a word, she slides an unmarked manila folder across the polished wood. Voss opens it. The first page is a wire transfer record from an offshore shell company, explicitly signed by Garrett H. Voss. The color completely drains from Voss's face. By the time he reaches the 3rd page of the dossier, his manicured hands are trembling uncontrollably. Victoria does not blink. She presses the silver intercom button on her desk. Security. Escort Mr. Voss out of the building immediately. Wednesday morning. The heavy oak doors of the Vraine corporate boardroom swing open to reveal the gathered executives. Victoria enters with 3 leather folios. Beside her walks Jack Caldwell. He wears a clean flannel shirt, completely unapologetic about who he is. The 9 board members sit perfectly still. The air in the massive room is thick with high-stakes corporate tension. In 42 precise minutes, Victoria dismantles the lies. She details $6.8 million in embezzlement across 9 years. She presents the offshore wire transfers, Del Mosby's notarized witness statement, and finally, her father's legally binding codicil. The boardroom is dead silent. At the far end of the long table, the senior corporate counsel clears his throat but asks no questions. Victoria delivers the final blow. $3 million from the engine sale, already wired into the operating account, with 0 commission taken by Caldwell. She gestures smoothly toward Jack. This is the original chief powertrain engineer. The man my father chose to protect our legacy. Victoria presents the final clause of the codicil. 12% equity in Vraine Holdings, granted to Jack as the Heritage Engineering trustee. The board vote is instantaneous and unanimous. Hands go up across the table before she even finishes reading the formal motion. An older board member, a man who had known her father for 40 years, stands up slowly from his leather chair. He walks the entire length of the mahogany table. He stops directly in front of Jack and extends his hand. Jack takes it. The firm handshake is a silent apology from the entire corporation, a profound restoration of a stolen honor. That afternoon, the meeting concludes. Jack and Victoria walk together into the quiet, hollow space of the corporate parking garage. The late sun slants low through the heavy concrete pillars, casting long, sharp shadows across the painted asphalt lines. They walk at exactly the same pace. The physical distance between them is close, yet they carefully do not touch. "You're not moving to Charlotte," Victoria states, her voice echoing slightly against the concrete walls. Jack shakes his head. "Lily's school is in Asheville. The shop is in Asheville. I'll commute. I'm used to long drives." Victoria stops beside her Range Rover. She lets the keys hang loose in her hand, making no move to open the door. She looks at Jack, the golden light catching the sharp line of her jaw. "Or I could come to Asheville more often." Jack meets her gaze. "Thank you for the 6 engines. And for the things you let me figure out on my own." Victoria offers a rare, genuine smile. "You don't have to thank me. I'm going to anyway." She gets into her car. Jack stands quietly in the heavy concrete shadows, watching the Range Rover pull out into the city traffic. He drives the 2 hours back to the mountains. For the first time in years, he rolls the windows down, breathing in the cold air. That night, in the small office at the back of the shop, Lily looks up from her schoolwork under the warm desk lamp. She sets her pencil down. "Dad, is Miss Victoria going to come to Asheville to see us?" Jack sits down beside his daughter, gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Maybe, sweetheart. Maybe." The mountains turn quickly to early October. Red maples line the winding roads, carrying the clean, biting edge of the first frost. Victoria rents a small, rustic house on Beaver Dam Road. It has 2 bedrooms, a screened porch, and a wood stove she hasn't learned to use. She drives up every Friday evening, trading the glass and steel of Charlotte for the quiet embrace of the mountains. In the city, she commands the boardroom with absolute authority. But her weekends belong to a different world entirely. Saturday morning. Sunlight fills the small kitchen. Lily holds a bone-handled paring knife, demonstrating the precise art of peeling an apple. Victoria, wearing a thick knit sweater, watches the 9-year-old with the same intense focus she applies to corporate contracts. Lily's hands move carefully, taking the red apple peel off in one long, unbroken spiral. Victoria tries. Her first apple ends up in jagged, uneven pieces. She lets out a rare, completely untethered laugh. Lily nods gravely at the messy attempt. "That's getting better, Miss Victoria. Dad will be proud." Jack stands quietly in the kitchen doorway, holding a steaming mug of black coffee, watching the 2 of them. He does not speak. He simply leans against the wooden doorframe, letting the domestic warmth of the house thaw his guarded heart. In the afternoons, the scene shifts back to the oily floor of Caldwell powertrain. Jack is already deep into the VP8 prototype. Victoria sits on a worn wooden chair in the corner of his bay. She watches his hands work with quiet fascination. The heavy, confrontational silence of their first meetings is entirely gone. Now, the quiet between them is a comfortable, shared space. "Do you miss Charlotte?" she asks suddenly, her voice carrying over the low hum of the shop.
"Did you hear it?"
Jack stops. He sets his metal depth gauge down on the bench, taking a long, slow breath before answering. "I don't miss Charlotte," he replies, his deep voice steady. "I miss a few people in Charlotte." Victoria does not ask which people. She looks down at the concrete floor, a profound understanding settling between them. Sunday afternoon. They walk along the rocky banks of the French Broad River. The slow water reflects the gray autumn sky. Lily runs several paces ahead, her laughter echoing as she skips flat stones across the cold surface of the river. Jack and Victoria walk exactly 2 paces apart. The cool mountain air smells of damp earth and falling leaves. Jack breaks the quiet rhythm of their walk. "Your father believed in valve timing," he says, his voice carrying over the rushing water. "He used to say a good engine depends entirely on it. The right moment. Not early, and not late. And a life the same." Victoria looks at him, fully absorbing the heavy, unspoken weight of the metaphor. Up ahead, Lily turns and waves from a large flat rock. They walk the rest of the river path in comfortable silence. That evening, twilight falls over the driveway. Victoria stands by her Range Rover, preparing for the long drive back to Charlotte. Jack walks out from the shop. Without a word, he hands her a small, beautifully polished wooden box. Victoria opens the lid. Inside rests a single, heavy bronze piston, polished to a soft, golden gleam. The base of the metal is carefully engraved, VP7 Serial 0017, Sebring 12 hours, 2014. "It is a piece of the first engine you started," Jack explains quietly. "You should have something that started under your hand." Victoria does not say thank you. She places the box gently on the passenger seat, meets his eyes for a long moment, and drives away. 6 months later. March. The blistering sun beats down on the asphalt of Daytona International Speedway. The Vraane team car, painted in heritage colors with the number 17 on the door, roars past the roaring grandstands. Inside the chaotic pit garage, 10-year-old Lily stands safely between Jack and Victoria, wearing heavy acoustic ear protection. She holds a small spiral notebook, meticulously tracking lap times and fuel pressures with a careful, serious hand. She had asked to join the racing crew 3 weeks earlier. Jack had said yes before she even finished the question. The endurance race runs for 4 brutal hours. The number 17 car dominates its class for 3 of them. Jack leans over the main engineering console. His focus is absolute, his eyes locked onto the live telemetry feeds. The driver's voice crackles over the radio headset. It is tight with concentration, asking for the final fuel calculations. Jack answers him directly. His calm, steady voice cuts through the overwhelming noise of the bustling pit lane. The restored VP7 engine performs flawlessly. The thermal output stays perfectly anchored in the green band, pushing the car toward victory. The checkered flag waves violently. The number 17 car flashes across the finish line, claiming first place in the GT class. The Vraane pit garage erupts. The mechanics jump into the air, throwing their heavy headsets and towels into the chaotic space. By the concrete pit wall, Dell watches the car cross. He pumps one weathered fist into the air in silent triumph. Overwhelmed by a decade of waiting, the old engineer turns his back to the cameras, walking away to quickly wipe his eyes. Lily spins around and throws herself joyfully into Jack's chest. Jack catches his daughter with one arm, his rugged face breaking into a massive, triumphant smile. Without looking away from the track, he extends his free, grease-stained arm toward Victoria. Victoria does not hesitate. She steps smoothly into the half-circle of his arm, letting her corporate armor drop entirely. Jack pulls her close, his heavy hand closing gently over her shoulder. It is a brief, anchoring moment of absolute unity. Lily glances up between the two of them, smiles once, and turns back to watch the racing crew lift the silver trophy. That night, the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean moves in long, slow lines under the pale light of a full moon. Inside the quiet hotel suite above the beach, Lily is sound asleep, exhausted from the chaos of the racetrack. A thick textbook about engine mechanics rests on her chest, rising and falling softly with every breath. Out on the balcony, Victoria stands alone at the railing. The cool ocean wind catches the loose strands of her hair. The sliding glass door opens with a soft whisper. Jack steps out into the crisp night air, leaving the room dark behind him. He walks to the railing and stands beside her. They are not touching, but the distance between them is effortlessly intimate. "My father would be proud," Victoria says softly, her eyes fixed on the dark, rolling water below. Jack leans his forearms against the cool metal rail. "He was proud before I ever met you again." A long, comfortable silence passes between them, filled only by the rhythmic crashing of the Atlantic waves against the shore. Victoria turns her head slightly toward him. "You know, I signed a piece of paper giving you $4,000 to haul away those engines." Jack chuckles softly, the sound carrying over the wind. "I remember. You also called me a country mechanic in front of a room full of lawyers." Victoria smiles faintly, looking down at her hands resting on the metal rail. "In the end, those 6 engines brought me here." Jack turns his head to look at her fully. The moonlight casts deep, cinematic shadows across his rugged features. "It wasn't the engines that brought you here," he says, his voice dropping to a calm, steady resonance.
Every mistake we've made, and still.
Victoria looks back at him. She searches his blue eyes for a long moment. What was it then? Jack does not answer. He simply looks at her, letting the profound silence speak the words he keeps guarded. She understands. She does not need the words. She slowly moves her hand along the cold railing, placing it right beside his. They are still not touching, but the physical space between them is electric with unspoken emotion. Jack thinks about valve timing. The right moment. After 4 years of walking through the dark alone, she had arrived neither too early, nor too late. Victoria turns her face fully toward him in the dark. Some things, they both realize, do not need to be lit to be known. April brings a soft, vibrant spring to the Blue Ridge Mountains. The dogwood trees bloom white along the winding edges of Sweeten Creek Road. Caldwell powertrain has transformed. The heavy iron doors are painted, and a new, quiet hum of high-end machinery fills the once-abandoned bays. The silver Daytona trophy sits unpretentiously on a weathered wooden shelf, right next to a row of old oil cans and spare spark plugs. Jack is back at the workbench. He is meticulously assembling the VP8 prototype, building the future of the Vraane legacy with his bare hands. The familiar sound of tires on gravel breaks the morning quiet. Victoria's Range Rover pulls smoothly into the driveway, catching the spring sunlight. She steps out, trading her sharp corporate suits for faded denim and a simple white blouse. She carries a cardboard tray of coffees. Walking into the shop, she does not knock. She belongs here now, moving comfortably through the scent of motor oil and warm metal. Lily runs up to greet her, taking a cup of hot cocoa from the tray. Victoria smiles, gently resting a hand on the girl's shoulder. In the background, Dell watches from the machining table. He nods slowly, offering a silent blessing to the new life filling the old shop. Victoria walks over to Jack's bench. She sets his coffee down on the clean metal, looking at the intricate new engine block together. The new VP8 block is flawless, Victoria says, her fingers tracing the smooth, unblemished aluminum casting. Jack takes a slow sip of the black coffee. It's lighter. Stronger. Built from everything we learned rebuilding the past. She looks around the brightly lit bay. The rusted corpses of the old engines are entirely gone, replaced by pristine workstations. There's no scrap pile anymore, she observes quietly, a faint, peaceful smile touching her lips. We don't throw things away here, Jack replies, his deep blue eyes meeting hers. If it's broken, we fix it. The subtext of his words hangs comfortably in the warm spring air. They had both arrived broken in their own ways. Victoria unfolds a massive paper blueprint on the metal bench, weighing the corners down with heavy steel ratchets. They lean over the drafting table shoulder to shoulder, their heads close together as they review the intricate schematics. Jack points to a complex valve assembly. Victoria nods in immediate understanding, matching his engineering rhythm perfectly. Outside, the mountain wind rustles the dogwood trees. Inside, the legacy of Vraane Holdings is safe in the hands of its true guardians. Summer arrives in Asheville. The mountain air grows thick and warm, wrapping around the isolated mechanic shop. The VP8 prototype is no longer just a paper drawing. It sits bolted to the heavy dyno mount, a masterpiece of modern engineering. Jack wipes sweat from his forehead with the back of his wrist, making a final, precise adjustment to the fuel line. Victoria is inside the concrete control booth. She is no longer just observing, she is commanding the digital console. She wears a plain gray t-shirt, her blonde hair tied up in a messy bun, completely immersed in the technical work. Fuel pressure is holding perfectly steady at baseline. She calls over the intercom, reading the complex data effortlessly. Jack looks at her through the heavy safety glass. The respect and pride in his eyes are unmistakable. He steps back from the engine and taps his headset. Ready when you are. Fire it up. Victoria presses the digital ignition sequence. The VP8 does not hesitate, it instantly howls to life with terrifying precision. The numbers on her screen climb flawlessly. It is the sound of a new era, forged by two perfectly aligned souls. The test concludes. The massive VP8 engine spins down smoothly, its deafening roar fading into a quiet, powerful hum. Jack pushes open the heavy door to the control booth, pulling the heavy radio headset from his ears. Victoria stands up from the digital console. The adrenaline of the flawless run leaves a bright, genuine flush on her cheeks. It's perfect, she says, her voice lacking any corporate pretense. It is pure, unguarded joy. Jack nods, stopping just inches from her. We built it right. It's ready. Before the quiet intimacy can settle, Lily bursts into the room, cheering loudly and holding two cold glass bottles of soda. Later that evening, the summer sun dips below the Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the sky in deep purples and golds. Jack and Victoria sit side by side on the lowered tailgate of his old pickup truck, watching the sunset over the quiet shop yard. I canceled my board meetings in Charlotte for Monday, Victoria says quietly, her eyes fixed on the fading light. Jack turns to her, a slow, grounded smile forming on his rugged face. So you're staying a little longer? Victoria holds his gaze. I'm staying. For good, she answers, the corporate world no longer defining who she is. The twilight deepens into a vast, starry mountain night, peaceful and completely untethered from the rush of the city. Through the warm window of the house, Lily is seen sketching her own mechanical designs under a yellow desk lamp. Jack and Victoria walk slowly back into the dimly lit shop. The pristine VP8 prototype gleams under a single overhead spotlight. The legacy of Vraane Holdings is finally whole, no longer separated by arrogant pride or tragic misunderstanding. Victoria places her hand on the edge of the cold metal workbench, her posture completely relaxed. Jack moves close. He reaches out, his strong, weathered hand gently covering hers. The first true, deliberate touch of their new life. It is the quiet culmination of years of waiting, a perfect, unbreakable alignment of two entirely different worlds. Like the flawless rhythm of a masterpiece engine, they had simply endured the dark, waiting for the exact right moment. The yellow lights of Caldwell powertrain glow softly against the dark forest. Not early. Not late. Right on time.